All right, here we are. Nicole Familiari, uh, which is in pursuit of science. How you doing today?
So good. So good. It's Friday. It's a beautiful day. Summertime. You know, couldn't ask for anything more. How are you doing today?
I'm great. So anybody that doesn't know, we are former partners, and we've learned a lot from each other. She's a absolutely wonderful, wonderful soul, and she's starting this new adventure where she's got this grand vision in mind for bringing community together and uh, intertwining both spirituality and science and mysticism, like all into this grand textual, beautiful, experiential thing. And I'd love to ask you more about it and see what you what is your grand vision for this?
I'm so glad you asked. I could talk about this all day, every day, infinitely. It's kind of like an obsession of mine, if you will. So, yeah, my passion project is called Witches in Pursuit of Science. And it's the idea that being a witch and being a scientist encapsulates the same energy, right? It's about curiosity, it's about getting involved, it's about learning about the world around you and your place in it and how to interact with it. And so, my goal is the media that it's currently existing in is through podcasts, as well as social media. Um, so, and the goal is to build a community of curious people who want to experiment with their lives, who want to experiment with magic, who want to learn things, try things out, and connect with others. And so from that's where we're beginning. And the hope is that every episode we go on a quest. Me and my partner Angelina, who you also know, and we go on a quest and of whatever we're interested in. And a quest is a question, unite, experiment, synthesize, transmit. Um, and so, where you learn about things, you try to tinker with it, come together, and you turn it into something new and you send it out into the world so someone else can do that. And it's loosely based off of the scientific method, um, but in a more lighthearted, hands on way. Yeah, so the idea is to build a community of people who do the same, and then one day be able to maybe host workshops at music festivals, one of my other main passions, and then from there maybe build our own music festival that's like the fusion of a music festival and a science fair. So people can come together, they can show off their quest, they can quest together, and then party down. Also, I really enjoy it, and then hopefully from there just keep building and building and building to maybe something more like a sustainable transient community where people can come and go and quest together and create and learn and all that good stuff. So that's
That's
the overall
badass.
vision.
That's so cool.
Thank you. It's
Mm-hmm.
funny because this was like so back in 2018 when I was driving around in my van, I had this idea, like this thing I wanted to create, this place that I wanted to call home, but I didn't know really what it was. I didn't know how I was going to get there. Um, and slowly but surely, pieces fell into place. I was struggling in my job with doing science things and wishing I had some support for not just the science aspect, but someone that could understand the science aspect and also support like personal growth and personal development. And then it kind of just snowballed and grew. And then Angelina said, "Why don't we start a podcast?" And that's when it really took off. Like all through COVID, we started working on it, and all of that time to break off from the world allowed me to create, put the pieces in place to create the world that I wanted to live in. Yeah. Um, yeah, and so the we've done some quests already on dreams and on the summer solstice. All the holidays. And, yeah, yeah.
So quests. Talk about quests for a second, because you're talking about quests between you and Angelina.
Yeah.
Are you like, so is that like a experiential like diving in together of certain topics, or what is that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So pretty much what happens is we're like, hey, I've got a question about this. So for example, our newest episode that's coming out next Thursday is a quest about dreams. And so this is a quest that I did with a good friend of mine that I've known since high school, where I came to her and it was kind of like the beta test quest, right? So I came to her and I was like, I'm having these really weird dreams. And that's weird for me. I don't dream a lot normally and I couldn't quite figure them out. I couldn't quite remember them. I was like, "Can you help me out? I want to know how to really get more in tune with my dreams, how to interpret them more, how to make them more vivid." And she was able to. She was like, "Yes, I know the thing." She is like this, like matriarch, which that's just she's so well informed, and so she made me an herbal blend and taught me all about the herbs and how to use them, and so I essentially we crafted an experiment. If I make a this herbal tea, can I set intentions of having dreams, and then what is the outcome of it? And it was quite the experience. But I won't spill all the beans on that one right here and now. But yeah, so it's a quest can be anything anything that you have a question about. Just like if you were just like working in the lab, where like you might want to learn about how this protein works or how your body works that can be applied outside of the lab to anything that you want to know. It starts with a question, and then you unite with someone else because it's better together, right? Everything's better together.
Oh yeah.
And kind of decide, like, okay, I want to do this, you do that. This is how we set our intentions of what we're going to learn, how we're going to learn it, where, when, all of that good stuff. And then you do the work, you learn stuff, you research stuff, and then you come together with what you've learned and you talk about it and you synthesize it into
Hmm.
something new. So for us on our quest, we synthesize it into a podcast episode to share what we learned. But it doesn't have to be a podcast episode when you synthesize. You can, like, as a scientist, we synthesize our work into data, figures, and a journal paper. But we could also synthesize it into like an informative video or a cartoon or a meme. Any way of conveying information that may have been really esoteric or complicated and taking it and making it easy to understand so that someone else could then take it and build on it with their new questions because hopefully whatever you're doing inspires other people to ask questions and kind of
Yes.
dig
Right,
in.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's what science is. Like,
Yeah,
you're
that's
just
exactly.
questioning how things work, and like, is this what I think it is? Like, let's test it and find out. And then
Yeah.
and sometimes more often than not, you find more questions.
Oh,
And you don't actually
yeah.
get to the answer. You're just like, "Oh god, there's even more questions that spiral off of this." And you just go down this rabbit hole of like just like really questioning so much of the world, because it's so expansive that you just fall in love with it on every single level, because it's like there's always more to unravel.
There's always
um
more. Yeah.
one of my favorite quotes is, I forget, I think it's Henry Miller. It says, even a blade of grass, when studied closely enough, becomes an infinite world in itself. So it's like
Yes.
these little moments that, like, even your own self, you can just dive into, like, all the different patterning and all the like ways in which you operate that are so uniquely you, and you could study it to try to be more in touch with yourself, to then be able to give more freely and more love, more expressive energy, or whatever it is that you want to facilitate with other people. um but like, so you come from a scientific background. I mean, you're a microbiologist. Like, there's so much about that is beautiful, because like, you start off this podcast with talking about the witchiness and the like the funness of like bringing this to festivals and all that, but like really where this came from is like rigorous study and knowledge and building your knowledge of like how to be in the scientific world. So I don't know, what do you have to share about that? What has
Yeah,
that been like?
I think biology is fascinating. Well, biology is a language, first of all. I mean, it is the study of everything that's alive, and that in itself is a topic of hot debate. Like, how do you define life? That's something that me and my lab discuss quite often. It's like this ongoing discussion of, well, how do you define what really is alive or not alive? It seems like a simple question, but it's not. Anyway, biology is a language to describe what it means to be alive. My passion in biology is microbiology. So, bacteria, fungi, viruses, single celled organisms, that's my jam. They're super cool. They are just such an efficient function of life, but they are so, so powerful. And they're powerful because the way that they cooperate with each other and the way that they interact with the other organisms around them. For instance, like, did you know that bacteria in our gut, in our that digest our food for us and live with us, are so very important to how we function that they can dictate your mood, your emotional levels, your activity levels. They even have the ability to detect and produce neurotransmitters. 90% of our
Mm.
serotonin lives in our guts.
Hmm.
90%. I mean, it's so, but yeah, microbiology is a big passion of mine. Whenever I started out in school, everyone was always like, "Oh, you're a scientist," and that's the nice way of saying is this kid asks too many questions. Please make her stop. you know. But so I set out and I wanted to study. Originally, I wanted to learn everything that you could put in and interact with your body. I just wanted to study pharmacy and nutrition when I first started out going to school, and I learned that that's a lot and a little beyond, too complicated, beyond my comfort zone because you have to incorporate so much about systems biology and organic chemistry and every organ in your body. And so, in the process of that, I took this microbiology class, and we learned about E. coli and salmonella, and but also lactobacillus and staphylococcus, and all of these different organisms that live within us, among us, and also completely autonomously on their own. They're not dependent on us, but we're very much dependent on them. And I thought that was really cool. And so I switched gears. I went into microbiology, and it's really fun as well, like the actual hands-on practice of micro in the lab. I personally find it to be one of the most beautiful sciences because what you do to see them, you grow them on dishes that are called agar plates. And all of the augers are usually different colors. And the way you differentiate between your organisms is often by feeding them different things, metabolites that then, just by the way they digest them, the byproducts turn different colors. So you might have some that turn green, some that turn black, some that create a halo effect based on what you feed them, and that gives you information. But yeah, I think micro is really more of an art. Actually, the American Society for Microbiology hosts an auger art competition every year where scientists literally paint with bacteria on these dishes and all the different colors and textures, and they make some incredible pieces of art. So I don't know where I was going with that, quite honestly, but
That's brilliant. That in itself right there, that's absolutely brilliant. And what that just reminded me too of is you had sent me a very a very close picture of a cell breaking off or separating. I don't know what the
oh
scientific term
yes,
of that
oh
is. Yeah, because I had put out a song called "Break the Cycle," and you thought it would be really cool if you captured an image of literally a cell breaking apart and becoming two. And I just kind of did some like graphic like some funky artistic stuff with it, and that became one of the promotional things for that song. So that was super cool. It just reminded me of that. And
Yeah,
this art is so beautiful, how you can just like take you can just like spread so many things, like what you were talking about with like people just like making art um out of uh, uh,
the bacteria
sorry,
on
my
the dish.
bacteria. Yes, my
Yeah,
brain was blinking. But yeah,
yeah,
it's so beautiful.
it
And
really is.
I'm so excited about all of the knowledge that can come from people tuning into like what you are creating, because like basically where you come from as a microbiologist, you have all the scientific like knowledge that is coming from this way, and then also like, and especially like experiences that we've had, like that have, when you decided to go on your journey to go across the United States on your with your van, and just like went to all these different places and all these different festivals, and like that was kind of like a um it seemed like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that seemed like the start of your like kind of your spiritual journey. And so today is like what you're doing with Witches in Pursuit of Science kind of feels like it's like these two worlds that you've been solidified in at different times, and like have collaborated with, have finally joined forces into what your purpose is becoming. And that just like, I don't know, it just feels so cool. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I'm really proud of you, and it's exciting to see that this is coming forth and being birthed into the world.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're exactly right. And thank you for seeing me. Thank you. I feel so seen. And yeah, you're exactly right. Um, I would, before I set out on that journey, I had reached like the culmination of what you're supposed to do. Gone to school. I was working in a lab. I'd done all the things you were supposed to do. I was making products and hygiene monitoring for food safety, and there was something missing, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And this Witches in Pursuit of Science project, where it started from was through that journey and me deciding I don't want to live in this duality of these two worlds that I feel that they can't coexist, of my spiritual self and my scientific self. And I wanted to find a way to integrate them exactly, and to um, bring them together, to bring like this cohesive wholeness to myself personally, and then radiate that outward, because I knew I couldn't be the only person feeling that way. Um, and so, yeah, I did. I was trying to find a way to integrate my passions into one cohesive project, and that is what it is. And so, and it's it feels like it's like a ripening, I suppose you could say, or it's just begun, though. Maybe the flower has bloomed, and then but the fruit has just started to to grow from that flower, right? If the time before my journey was the blossoming of the flower, now is the genesis of the fruit. There's still so much work to do. There's
Mm-hmm.
still so far to
Mm-hmm.
go, but I can kind of see where to go and what it'll become, and how to bring that like peace within myself, of not of feeling at like whole with my scientific passions as well as my more spiritual eccentric passions, because for a long time I felt that both couldn't coexist, that I couldn't bring in my esoteric beliefs into the science world. I would be discredited, and I couldn't talk about my scientific passions with my
I was
spiritual
just gonna
friends. Oh,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it was that like due to feeling like there was going to be pressure from outside sources of like that couldn't be a thing, like shooting you down for like the scientific community, shooting you down for experimenting in like even like pagan or any kind of like ritualistic way or any kind of like magical way, and then like maybe possibly from the other side of things, like trying to bring things into a scientific way, or like bringing that understanding to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just curious to me how like perhaps there's like this tension on both sides, and you're kind of like in the center trying to figure out how to integrate both and communicate with both and try to bring people along the journey.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. If you start talking about manifesting things to scientists, sometimes they'll just roll their eyes, or synchronicities. They're like, often, but honestly, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way you approach things, as well as your confidence in yourself and your beliefs. If you are presenting your beliefs to someone that's very firm in their beliefs, as in a in a way that you're not very confident in it, it's easy for you to get your beliefs knocked down and to try to sway with the outside opinion or the general consensus, right? And I think that's a strong lesson to learn in a spiritual journey, as well as a strong lesson to learn for any scientist, because every time if you discover something new, or you publish something, or you give a talk, right, you're either going to get a huge amount of backlash if it's really juicy, if it's like a good piece of science. Like, people, you get huge naysayers. So, like, for instance, the field that I work in now is, we focus on a thing called biomolecular condensates, which is phase separation. Like water goes from ice to liquid to gas. But these things happen within cells. Things partition and they form little droplets, and in those droplets, things happen. This is a relatively new ideology or philosophy or theory in biology right now. And so when it first came out, when my boss was really studying this, so many people would be like, "You're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. This is nonsense. There's no way it's true." And like just this past week, we attended a virtual conference that had over 300 scientists attending, listening, and talking, and a lot of them were previous naysayers. So it's important to know yourself. It's important to know your data and trust it. Trust what you sense, trust what you detect, and be open to changing your opinion and your beliefs when the data says so. Data
Hmm.
being, values you collect in the lab or experiences that you have firsthand. But it, the but you got to trust the data, and you also have to
Yeah,
accept that you don't know everything, and you're probably wrong about a lot. But if you trust the data, then you trust the data, no matter what the context. I, um,
that's so cool. I mean, that's, but I mean, it makes sense too because of like, I mean, throughout history, like, I mean, we used to think that we were the center of the universe, right?
right.
Like, like it took people going against the grain, and it seems like um the scientific community seems to be the most resistant to new information. You know what I mean? Like it's really wild to me because it's like when you finally like when something goes against what was like there's almost like, and I don't mean this as an insult to you at all, but
None
like it
taken.
almost seems like there's this level of pretentiousness, like, oh, we know, and this like cannot be changed because this is the latest result of what the scientific data says, or the community has spoken and agreed with each other that this is final. And the thing is, like, it just, I mean, from what I understand, like science is always changing. Like, our understanding of the world is always changing, and we like any good scientist is open to those changes and open
Hmm.
to the possibility that everything that we know could be wrong. And that, I feel like, is an important position to be uh, to be in, like, to for everything that is happening in our world to really come to terms with the depthness of, I mean, we haven't even begun to really see into what is making everything actually tick and what the
Mm.
fabric of the universe actually is. And we know certain things, and we've gotten pretty far in the past, even in the past 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. But this is such a short amount of time. And what is it going to be in another 50 years? Like, we just don't know. And like, it's up to you, it's up to us to really just like question these things and just continue to be open to the evolving mystery of the infinite current.
Always, always be open to the infinite current and always question it. And what you touched on there about this kind of elitism or this know-it-all nature of the scientific community is actually was one of the inspiring factors to me developing Witches in Pursuit of Science. I think that that's a big obstacle preventing a lot of people from having access to um, really learning and understanding what scientists are doing, what the discoveries are. I think there's this, it's off putting a lot of ways, like the elitist boys club of science that's like, well, we know everything because we studied it and you couldn't understand it. It's hard and complicated. And that's just not true. Anyone can understand anything and it's up to people who've devoted their whole lives to knowing it on an intricate level to be able to communicate it in understandable terms. You know, you can use complex vocabulary to explain anything, but can you convey it to anyone? And that's a really powerful thing to strive for, I think, because everyone can understand the way a cell divides. Everyone can understand the central dogma of biology and your DNA, RNA, protein, and how our bodies work. Um, and I think a lot of times when people get into science, we get bogged down by the terminology, we get bogged down by the equations, we get bogged down by the vastness of the knowledge because it's just so much. And it doesn't need to be. It's one thing at a time. You know, ultimately, what all biology comes down to four nucleotides: A, T, G, C. That's it. That makes up everything that happens in our cells in a different order, in a different pattern, in a different sequence. Everything we know is created by that. It's very simple, sort of, right?
Simple to you.
No, but it's not, right? Just because it's simple doesn't mean
Yeah.
that it's easy. It's elegant.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
But it's fascinating, and it can be, um, it just can be all consuming. The more you learn, the more you want to learn, the more you realize what you don't know, and that there's more that we don't know than we do know. And I
Mhm.
think whenever we speak about things in absolutes, that this is the only way it is, it's coming from a place of ego and a closed off place. And it's important to keep ourselves open to the idea that we don't know everything. And that can be really liberating, you know?
Mhm. It depends on how you look at it and your interface with it, like who you are in reference to that. Because there's certain people that get scared as hell trying to like think about the fact that they want, like, so many. I feel like so many people just want to know. They want so desperately to know that they will fight tooth and nail anybody claiming that they don't know something about something. Like, it's a really wild experience to be in touch with that when somebody is really just like fighting the fact that they don't know about something. And I think a part of it is just because there's so much chaos in our world. Like, we live in so much chaos that we want to know something so solidly to bring ourselves into some kind of balance, or some kind of like, we want to have stability within the chaos. And if we feel like we know something, then it's like our chance to ground into like
Yeah.
who we think we are, you
Mm.
know? And but I don't think that pursuit shouldn't be I mean, I don't think that pursuit shouldn't be traveled to. You know,
Absolutely.
I think that's like it's a great mystery. I mean, I'm talking too much.
No, you're
You
not. You're
take
not.
over.
Sometimes personally, I struggle with knowing like when it's my turn to talk. So I think that's what just happened there. It's like, oh, I think
I
it's
think
my
we just
turn.
feel it out. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
just the yeah.
But so two things about chaos um, is there's a term called eudaimonia. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Eudaimonia is a euphoric, peaceful chaos. To exist within eudaimonia is my ultimate life goal, a euphoric, peaceful chaos. Now, we're constantly fighting chaos through the nature of our biology because that's the way our brain works. On a Which is the second thing. The way our brains work, the way our brain processes information, is that we actually create order from the chaos. And our brains are kind of lazy. They are incredible and magnificent machines, right? But they're also kind of lazy in that once they experience something, they know it to be true. It's going to automatically create it to be true. It's going to minimize the amount of information it needs to process. So I think that it's a when we cling to things as this is the way it is, it's a reflection of our brains kind of being efficient with its RAM, if you will. If you think of your brain as a computer, right? That this is the way it is because that's the neural path that it has. But our brains are also incredibly plastic, which means that they can change their paths. Just like walking through a field, the first time you got to trudge through the grass and make it. But if you take the path many, many times, it's quick, it's easy, it's clear. So, and that's kind of the way our brains work. It says, this isn't orange, it tastes like orange, and it's always going to taste like orange. But sometimes you get, like, I don't know, a lemon that looks kind of like an orange and it really throws you off, right? Like, um, so, but I think we like to create order from the chaos because it brings us peace. But there's a euphoric, peaceful chaos that is just like nectar of existence.
Where do you think that lies? Is it within like almost like a vision of you being the eye of a storm? So like you are the center of what is creating a lot of chaos, but it's also order. I don't know how to describe that.
I think it's like I think it's really rooted in acceptance. Um, that things are going to happen, things will happen, and to just accept them for what they are can really bring you a sense of bliss and a sense of peace. So, and it's not to say that you don't still feel chaotic, but to accept and recognize this feeling of uncertainty for what it is, I think is what brings about eudaimonia. And
Eudemonia.
eudaimonia, it's one of my favorite words.
Yeah. I've never heard of that until now.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to share it with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Uh, so it it just it brings through this like question of like how do we create that, right? And how do we
Oh,
bring that into our lives? And I guess I would have my own. I feel like I have my own relationship with it without even calling it that, but you calling it a thing, like making it a thing, like a term, gives me something to like point to and say that's what I'm like, that's what it is that I'm actually actively trying to do every day. Um, but I think it's like, yeah, it's rooted in acceptance. I feel like you're because the world is a combination of so many chaotic variables that when you slow down the triggered response of trying to figure it all out or trying to come up with a solution like eagerly trying to find a
Mm,
solution to every moment's quote unquote problem, which isn't really a problem. It's just a challenge, or it just is, it's just the way in which the world is reflecting back to you who you are in this moment,
mm,
that you you're able to if you're able to slow down enough, you're able to be this peaceful chaos, or you're able to interface with this peaceful chaos that is just revolving and expressing itself around you and in everything that you're interfacing with. Is
yeah,
that
that makes sense.
is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
something close to it?
Yeah, I think so. Because the chaos is happening all the time, and we can even be a source of the chaos. I mean, I know sometimes in my head it can be rather chaotic, and I don't know if it's necessarily so much about. Well, I guess in a way it is slowing down, but it's the ability to observe yourself
Mm,
experiencing this chaos, and then the ability to observe yourself making a decision whether the chaos is good or bad, because ultimately good and bad are opinions at the end of the day. There's no absolute good and there's no absolute bad. It's an opinion. And I think once you find yourself in a very stressful situation, it's very chaotic, and you're like, this is bad, this is really bad, I don't like this. Now, as long as you're not actually physically being harmed and no one else is physically being harmed, it might just be overwhelming. It's not really bad, it just is. It just is, and it's new. It's something maybe you didn't experience, you're not used to. Your brain hasn't formed that path yet to know how to process it, and so it's just a lot, I guess. But yeah, yeah.
mm-hmm,
And I think a really good tool to help exist in eudaimonia and to get that awareness is to practice mindfulness and meditation, which is something
mm-hmm,
that I have grown to really love and appreciate. And I definitely accredit you to teaching me a lot about meditation and getting me in touch
mm-hmm.
with it and different ways of meditating. I mean, just I remember whenever I was staying over up in Michigan with you guys, and you were like, "Do you want to meditate with me?" Nobody had ever asked me that question before, and it really struck me. It made me think about things differently. I didn't know what I was in for. I didn't know what we were going to do, and I certainly would have never predicted that it would have ended up to where we are today. But I'm so grateful for that because it really made a major impact on my life, and I hope you know how thankful I am for you for sharing that gift with
I'm so grateful. It feels so
me.
good. That's mm, yeah. That's yes, yes. That's the goal. I mean, that's probably not what I was attempting in that moment. I just probably just needed to meditate and wanted somebody to share it with. But I'm so glad that it ended up being something um, that impacted you so much, you know? And well, mindfulness, yeah, I'm so grateful that you brought up mindfulness and that it's shown up in so many different ways, which is like I hate to jump so much, but it's like it reminds me how much nothing that we know is created by us. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
everything that we've learned, like everything that like I have maybe taught somebody else or somebody has taught me, they learned from somebody else. And they learned from somebody else, but it wasn't even just like one person they learned from. Everybody is such a combination of everybody else and every book they've read and every video they've watched and every experience they've had with a plant and every
mm,
dream that they've had, and all like it's just connected to this infinite consciousness that's like constantly teaching and giving and receiving, and we're all sharing together. Everything's a remix. Think about music, like everything, like
mm,
every single sound that has ever been created is all has already been created. It's just the combination of them,
right.
and that's like what I feel like musicians are just like really like DJs of like DJs of the infinite. I don't even know how to say it. Like just DJs of remixing the possibilities of every sound that could be, and slowing down and speeding up and feeling into what needs to be expressed, and how like sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not, and it just like comes through, and sometimes the most unintentional things end up being the best things too, even though I personally prefer intentionality with music. But I
I
think
know
there's a certain level of like free flowness that just like makes things so spicy and good and rich.
there is a decadent uniqueness to things like an everyone orchestra. If you've ever got the blessing of experiencing an everyone orchestra at a festival where multiple band members from multiple
Mm.
all throughout the playing all weekend get on stage together and just improvise, and they make incredible music. And what they generate a novelty, and I think that's kind of something that you're getting at. So Terence McKenna has this really passionate speech and ideology about the nature of the universe is to generate novelty. um, and that's what you were saying about music really reminded me of that. You know, we're just mixing all these different sounds together in different combinations. It's generating novelty. It's generating something new from something that already was. And that you see that reflected in our personal experiences. You see that reflected in biologic evolution of organisms. You know, a speciation. You get exotic birds with long beaks that are very novel based on their plants. You get exotic sounds that are very personal and music to how people feel, or you get completely once in a lifetime sounds of a everyone orchestra. But the universe craves novelty, and it's the driving force of all creation, in my opinion. And I think Terence McKenna is to generate novelty. That whatever you do, whatever is happening, is to make it unique, something ephemeral, something evanescent in existence, you know, but novel, and that brings significance to it. That's the beauty of it. That's where the magic lies.
It breaks the cycle.
It breaks the cycle.
That feel yeah, that feeling of just like I've been in this situation for so long, and now like it's sometimes it's like you meet somebody and you're like, holy shit, that's what I'm supposed to experience. I'm supposed to break out of like this same repetitive like bullshit, so to speak, that I've just been like investing myself into unconsciously or maybe consciously. And now it's like you meet somebody, or you see this like vista of beauty, like you go to nature, or you go to like a place you've never been to, or you take a psychedelic, you go into this other world that like shows you, oh, this is where it's at. And like it doesn't mean that you have to like that like like the highness, or like in reference to like a psychedelic or something. I'm not trying to say that like that is the place, but it can break you out of the monotony that reminds you of what is the place, which is novelty. The novelty,
Mm,
like the experience of a freshly crisp, like biting into a new fruit that you've never tasted before. Like, and that's actually something that I've experienced while being out here in Dominica, is passion fruit. I've never even tasted passion fruit in my life, but it's growing here, so I literally break it open, just like this like amazing fruit, and I'm like, what?
just
This
fresh off the
exists?
tree, just. Pluck.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. It's just like it's here. It's
wow.
like, hello, thank you.
Yes, I am here and I am delicious and enjoy me, please, so that you can spread me
Yes.
around so more people can enjoy me
Yes,
as
take
well.
me in.
Yes. Yes. I'm so happy you got to have that experience. What incredibly like authentic ex- i- interaction with nature, like in its purest form to just and that brings me a lot of joy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a website or a link that you can plug for people tapping into Witches in Pursuit of Science? Is it just on Facebook?
Yeah. So, well, there's a few places. So we're on Facebook, which is In Pursuit of Science. Um, that's the Facebook page. There's also a Facebook group called Whips Questresses for anyone that wants to actively get involved in a quest or just be more connected within the community. And we also have a YouTube channel, which is In Pursuit of Science on YouTube. And then we're also on Spotify and Amazon Podcasts and Google Podcasts, I think. And
Probably
I
wherever
can
you can find. Yeah.
wherever you can find your podcasts. Yeah, it's got
Yeah,
the whole
well,
works.
I've noticed when you go through one of those like DistroKid or like CD Baby or whatever one you went through, it just kind of spreads it out to all the possible ones, all the almost like stores is what they call it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you
yeah,
like so looking it up, like you can even find this podcast on Spotify
yeah. You
and
can.
all all those places. Um, I'm really happy that we've switched to video because before it was just a audio podcast, and although that was fun, this is so much. There's so much more. Like I feel like I get more out of it, and I feel like other people can too because you're just like I'm seeing you. You know,
Mm,
like I'm able to see your expression, and we're able to like have this dialogue where we're like, "Hey, aw, hello,"
yeah,
and then uh the visual element to it, I think, is in ineffable to the experience. Like it brings so much to the experience that it allows you to really take in information that you don't like maybe if you were just like listening to it and maybe you're like eating a bag of potato chips or like you're like not as paying attention, maybe you're like driving in the car or something, um and that's fine too, but like I love this visual element and I'm so glad that you've uh came onto this podcast and are sharing so beautifully what you're tapping into and expressing into the world. And you're just such a absolutely amazing human being, Nicole. And I'm super excited for all that you're doing with Witches in Pursuit of Science. Uh, and so, yeah, I mean, if there's anything else that you wanted to share or any links or any lasting thoughts or expressions, I'd say go for it now.
Oh, shucks. Well, Tony, I just want to say I love you so much, and I'm so grateful to share this space with you. Thank you for having me on here. It's been wonderful to chat with you. I also do want to note, to circle back a little bit, I think it's important to give credit where credit is due. So you mentioned about the cell division picture I sent you for Break the Cycle, and
Mm-hmm.
that image was actually not taken by me. It was taken by one of my lab mates, Manolo Rios. He's an incredibly talented scientist and a very inspirational human being. And he is very, very talented at working with confocal microscopy and fluorescence microscopy, much more talented than I am. And so he actually took that photo, and I want to make sure he gets the credit for it because it wasn't my photo.
Absolutely.
But he wanted to give it to you because I shared your song with him, and he was like, "We should send him a cell cycle."
Aww.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So He went and took a photo, and so that was a photo of a C. elegans embryo undergoing one of its first cell divisions, which is something we watch and analyze and then break and put back together all the time in the lab. So that just
Wow.
wanted to make sure to give credit where credit was due on that one.
I'm so glad you did that. Yeah.
But
Well,
other than
great.
yeah.
Yeah. We're great. This is fine. This is
You're
this is
great.
fantastic. You're
You're
great.
fantastic.
All right.
Thank
This
you
is
so, so much. I'm just so full of
oh
joy and appreciation right now.
mm.
You just I can't imagine a better way to spend an evening. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, so we've tuned in and we found another person. This is Tune In and Find the Others, and we look forward to next week. I think next week we're going to talk to J Rose, so that'll be
Yeah.
fun. So yeah, thank you, Nicole,
Thank you, Tony. It was a
and
pleasure.
I don't know, I don't want it to end, but I guess this is
I
it.
don't either. I feel like I have run out of relative content to say, but I also don't want it to end. So maybe we'll come back another time and we can do this
We'll
again.
circle around.
Yeah, yeah. All
We'll make
right.
it happen, Captain.
Oh, aye, aye, matey.
Aye, aye. All
All right.
right.
Well, take
Goodbye,
care of
Nicole.
yourself.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.